there's not many people I can say in this business that's had my back or just been a voice of reason or the guy that like a call away. It's great to have someone like you who's been had such an impact on my career. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. It really is an honor. So thank you.
So I wanted to sort of go to the beginning of your career because you have been a part of so many great films that the audience at home will know. And I'm sure as a writer, it's like you're sort of behind the scenes. No one can say, "Oh, that's Peter Lenkov." Like the writers are always behind the curtain, the creating the magic. Can you sort of when you started? You're from Montreal, Canada.
Yeah.
You're a big hockey, fan, and growing up in Montreal, and then discovering your passion for writing. When did this all happen for you?
I remember my mom, my mom every Valentine's Day would leave us a poem. And this is going back to like, I think my earliest memories, very, very young. And she had always talked about wanting to be a writer. And the poem that we got every year sort of summed up the year for us individually. So each kid, if I had done something wrong or I'd misbehaved or I had a bad, um, bad grades, she would sum it all up. And it was very entertaining.
Hmm.
I remember like, once a year we looked forward to these poems and they were very entertaining. And I always got a great feeling from the idea of being able to put words down on paper and affecting somebody.
Hmm.
That's what I took away from it. So from a very early age, and I think it was like 10, 11, I started like making my own cartoons because I love drawing also. So I would make my own cartoons and then I would do short stories and I wrote a play when I was 13. I the idea of putting words down and affecting somebody um, really made me feel great, and it made me feel like I was doing something special. Um, and I um, had always I always wrote. I
Hmm.
always like I would listen to storytellers like Bob Dylan or Bruce Springsteen, and I would
Hmm.
take away from the music the stories they were telling.
Hmm.
So all through my, youth and adolescence and, sort of the stages you go through, writing was a big part of my life. Um, and I again wrote short stories where I would give them to my friends or my family, or I would write like my own Mad magazine.
Oh no way.
And yeah, so I would do my own. It was called Etc.
Hmm.
ETC. And I would do that, and I'd give it to everybody in my family, and that
Would
was
you
the
draw
way
the
for
cartoons as
me.
well? Would you do?
Yeah, I would draw the cartoons also. Yeah, and then when I went into CJEP, which is like pre-college, I was drawing for the school newspaper. Um, but I knew wasn't good enough to have a career as an artist.
Mm.
I knew that. I was self-aware. But I loved drawing. But I thought if I could figure out how to make a living as a writer, that would be the dream job. And but I ended up because I grew up in a household where our parents really pushed the idea of going to college, getting a
Hmm.
degree, having a real job. So I went into pre-law at McGill University, and
McGill. I remember McGill.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
McGill, and I can't believe I even got into McGill because I was a horrible student, but I really was. But I sort of found myself daydreaming all day, writing again plays and poetry, and I was just writing, and
Were
I
you were
ended
you
up.
were you writing them and putting the plays up on their feet, or were you just downloading whatever was coming to?
You looking to amp up your ride? Total Off Road and more has got you covered. Whether you're shopping for custom wheels, lighting, or you just need something installed like a spray on bed liner, they're your one stop shop for all off road, performance, and automotive needs. Find a location near you at totaloffroad.com. Total Off Road, where every ride becomes an adventure.
Well, the first one I did when I was 13 was called Bar Mitzvah Man and Reuben, and we did that. It was the Kosher Crusaders, and we actually put that on his feet at a summer camp. So, um, I did get to do a few of them like that, but they were very primitive. I really didn't know. It wasn't like there was a place to go to get samples of plays that you
Hmm.
could look at for even the basics like formatting.
Hmm.
So I would do them the way I imagined they would be done. But I decided that first year at McGill that I was going to, because I decided I was going to go into film school, because that was my dream. My dream was to somehow translate writing into a career,
Hmm.
into something that actually paid. So I dropped out of McGill, went into Concordia, um, and found out that there really isn't, at that time at least, there wasn't really um, uh, uh, support for writing. There was support for making art films and documentaries, but there really wasn't a background for screenwriting.
And were you not
So
to
I sort
not to cut you off? Were you, because it wasn't like you had Final Draft back then? Like, were you on a typewriter or what were
Oh
you?
God, I was on a typewriter. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, that's
yeah,
so. Do you still have that typewriter?
yeah. No, no, I borrowed that typewriter. I didn't even have enough money to buy my own typewriter, but I did get to use an Apple IIc.
Hmm.
I think
Wow.
it was the Apple II, or um, but you'd still have to create your own
Hmm.
format. Like you'd have to use, you sort of have to. There was nothing like that existed,
Hmm.
and I didn't even get a formatting program until there was a store that opened up in LA called the Writers Computer Store. Um, and I was already writing screenplays at that time, so I was like a late adapter to the computer
Hmm.
and the technology that now is like, the go-to, like the
Mm.
Final Draft or Scriptware or whatever,
Yeah.
Scriptwriter.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was just writing it, and it looked like it was written by somebody that didn't have a formatting program.
So
So
would you just write the dialogue, or would you put like the description and that, and then create the scene? Like, were there references that you had to come up with the actual script, or were you?
When legendary American iron demands perfection, Ranger Point Precision answers the call. Handcrafted in Texas, our premium aftermarket parts transform your lever-action guns into a work of art that perform just as good as they look. From perfect fitting components to innovative design, we're keeping the spirit of the American West alive, one rifle at a time. Ranger Point Precision, Texas made, America proud. Built for those who demand excellence.
no, I was writing the dialogue, I was doing all that, but I was writing it more like I had seen a play. Like I
Hmm.
remember I had seen a play. Like I went to a bookstore and I remember I'd seen the formatting of a play. So I started doing it like that.
Hmm.
And when I finally moved to LA and saw a professional screenplay,
Uh,
then I understood how it needed to look, at least.
hmm.
So
What was the first like real screenplay that you remember what that one was?
yeah, it was well, I wrote it my last year. I dropped out of Concordia Film School, but I wrote it during that year, thinking I could somehow just go to LA and magically sell the script. So it
Hmm.
was a script called Hero, and it was about a superhero who's aging,
Hmm.
um, who's retired, because the idea for me as a kid was, because I loved comic books and superheroes. The idea is what happens when Superman gets old.
Yeah.
So the idea of Superman getting old and a young boy finding out where he lives, and getting him to come out of retirement for one last sort of hurrah.
Dude, it's awesome.
Um, yeah,
That's a
yeah.
great
Thank
story.
you.
You got to
Yeah.
do that.
So I wrote that script, and I ended up coming out to LA, taking an advanced screenwriting course at UCLA. Um, and I somebody told me the best way to get into the business was work as an assistant or
Hmm.
work, answering phones for a producer. So they used to have this board at UCLA where you could get jobs, internships basically. And I found one that was on the bus route from UCLA down Wilshire
Oh
Boulevard.
wow.
And it was La Cienega and Wilshire Boulevard, the corner. And it was a producer who I went there, and I got a free, I was working for free as an intern. I showed her the script, and she ended up optioning the script. And we almost got Danny Kaye attached to it. At the time, Danny
No way.
Kaye was
Yeah.
still pretty vital.
Yeah.
Um, and then he passed away.
Mhm.
And then the thing just like floundered. So, um, but that was my first script. And then I wrote about 7 more before I sold one. So
Were you writing to sell, or were you just writing because you were just so full of ideas and creativity and understanding the craft of how to like build characters and find the why and find the heartbeat and find all those things that you now know? Like each one that you wrote, you finally were like, oh, this is how I craft my story. Would you learn each time from that, or was it just sort of blind passion of just putting words on page?
well, I think I learned from each one, and I
Mhm.
think I learned to appreciate the craft and the art of it. But look, I'm going to be honest. I was desperate to sell something
Yeah,
because I was running out of money and I
yeah,
had nothing.
yeah.
So each one I was doing in a different genre, trying to find my
Just sort of
voice.
throwing it at the wall. Yeah.
Literally, and I'd go see something like Woody Allen's Hannah and Her Sisters.
Mhm.
Then I'd come home and I wrote a script about a guy turning 40 and his life blowing up.
Mhm.
So I would sort of like follow the trends,
Mhm.
and I would be writing uh, things that I probably shouldn't have been writing, that I
Mhm.
knew nothing about. But I was so desperate to sell something to pay the bills that I was. What I didn't realize is I was going through my own film school. I was like learning what
Mhm.
worked, what didn't work for me. I was learning about my voice. I was learning about what I could contribute to the genre, and how to find something that I could write from start to finish that had a real command over a story. How
Mhm.
I could write something from beginning to end that had a strong middle, that had a strong spine. Um, and each one of those very bad screenplays, I learned something from. I really was started out of desperation, and then slowly, as you start to sell, you start to realize, like, I wanna write something I'm proud of, not
Mhm.
just to sell, but
Yeah.
something that I'm proud of,
Mhm.
something that would be tombstone worthy, that at the end of the day, if they put that on my tombstone, that's gonna
Yeah.
that sums up my, the sort of like my journey. Um, but yeah, the early days was just about selling something.
What
It was
was
really about trying to get on somebody's radar.
Where did the idea come from of the first script that you sold to, like, what was that journey like to where it actually got sold, where you started writing that story and then the sell happening?
Well, there were a couple, like, options that I had, like,
Mm.
very small options. I think they were, like, 6 months for $2,500, but $2,500
It's a
dollars
lot
back
back
then
then.
was, like, a lot of
Oh,
money, and I
yeah.
could, like, live for a
You're a
good
king.
4 months
Yeah.
on that, yeah. Because I think I was renting a room from somebody, like, literally just a room in their apartment, and I think I was spending $500 a month or
Oh my god.
450 or something. So
That's
$2,500 is half a year
yeah.
if you eat 1 meal a day at the
Yeah.
Mongolian barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. You
yeah,
fill up you
so it
fill
was
up I
all
did
you
the
can
same
eat.
thing.
Yeah,
You fill up the whole plate, then weigh it.
yeah,
Yeah, I did the
yeah,
same thing.
yeah, yeah. So it
That's
was all you can eat,
yeah.
Mongolian barbecue,
Yeah.
1 meal a day. I learned a lot of tricks on how to, like, sustain yourself. So that was a script I wrote called Project Blue Book, which was about
Aliens?
UFO investigators.
Yeah.
Um, and I changed it to The Way Out of Towners.
Mhm.
But it was sort of like a Ghostbuster ripoff,
Mhm.
about UFO investigators. Uh, and that got optioned by a guy named John Landau, who
Mhm.
actually became James Cameron's partner, did Titanic and
Oh, wow.
all the sort of James Cameron movies. He was a big influence on me
Mhm.
as a producer, or a big, he believed in me, which
Mhm.
was like, that's sometimes all you need is somebody
Yes.
to say, hey, uh, you're doing a good job. And that's what gets you through the next 6 months, is
Mhm.
somebody who just gave you a compliment, uh, and that's the fuel you'll need to, like, eat those 1 meal a day just to get to that next screenplay.
It's crazy that you say that too, because for people that are listening that aren't in the business, it's a very lonely business when, like, to even like get your foot through the door. Like, I remember when I moved down and I lived in this one bedroom, wasn't even, it was just a room, and I washed my like dishes in my bathtub, and I had like a hot plate, but I would go days without talking to anybody. Like I'd just be like, I'd go to that, like the Coffee Bean, and I'd sit there and I'd wait for my pager to go off for my agent to tell me I had an audition, and I'd have quarters in my pockets in case my agent called. But you wouldn't really talk. You were just chasing something that was there. But when somebody would be like, "Hey, you're doing a good," you'd be like, "Oh, okay." It's like this little thing. You'd be like, "Oh, okay." It would like, oh yeah, and that would like sit with you for give you like a good week or two of like confidence again to keep going. It's crazy the little things that someone can do that they don't know, like just saying that when they see it how much that will shape and craft you as an artist to push through the tougher times. And then where were you then when like what was your first big sale, your first big project?
The first big sale I had was Demolition Man.
So
That
crazy.
ultimately became the
It's so crazy.
Stallone. Yeah, yeah. But here's the thing about that movie. So I was like at this like place where I wasn't sure what my next script would be, and I went to this place called the Hollywood Book and Poster Company. I had just seen Lethal Weapon, and the Hollywood Book and Poster Company used to sell screenplays.
Hmm.
And I had $15 in my pocket, and I spent that $15 on the screenplay for Lethal Weapon because I thought it was a unique sort of story.
Hmm.
And um, and I had heard that it was written by somebody who was just a few years older than I was at the
Hmm.
time. Um, or maybe 5 years older, but still in my sort of like, where I was around, still a young, very early 20s. And I took the screenplay and I sat outside and I read the screenplay, like literally outside a Hollywood Book and Poster Company. I was like amazed by the fact that, Shane Black didn't follow sort of everything that I had read up until their traditional sort of like
Hmm.
screenwriting. He was talking to the audience and or the reader,
Hmm.
and I was just blown away that you could actually write a script in the way you speak to people, the way you communicate. But I was always trying to like mimic screenwriters.
Hmm.
I was trying to mimic the way they write. So that was an epiphany.
Hmm.
And then I realized that, like, somebody also told me, and it's sort of like a cliche, but at around the same time, somebody said, write the kind of movie that you like watching.
Mm.
And that's how I got to Lethal Weapon. Um, and I said, I'm going to write a cop movie, but I got to come up with a concept that's not just a cop movie because that's just. And then I was standing in line. I was about to go and see my parents at Christmas time, um, to see them in Florida, uh, and I was standing in line and I saw this National Enquirer that had a story about Walt Disney being frozen, and it was all about cryogenics.
Oh wow.
And I just read the story while I was waiting in line there, and somehow between those two thoughts about writing a cop movie and cryogenics, and then I had a car that was like a salvage vehicle that I didn't have a radio in, so I had a boombox chained to the back seat, and a friend had given me Dream of the Blue Turtles, which was a Sting album, and the boombox was broken, so it would keep playing the same song over and over again, and that song was called Demolition Man. And there was a line in the song that said, "Don't mess around with the Demolition Man." And
No way.
every day driving to the job where I was an intern, where I wasn't getting paid, I kept thinking like, who the hell is the Demolition Man if you don't want to mess around with him? He must be some badass. So then the sort of mashup of cryogenics, cop movie, and this thing about Demolition Man, about a bull in a china shop. Like I just had this
Mhm.
this thing is like, if you're not going to mess around with him, he's this character that that's bigger than life. And that's how it came together. And then I sort of came up with the idea, and I was so exhausted by that time of writing screenplays that nobody read that I cold called Riley Ellis, who worked for Joel Silver,
Mhm.
because I had read a story about her in the trades.
Mhm.
And I cold called her and I said, just give me 5 minutes. I just want to pitch you. And I pitched her Demolition Man. She said, I don't understand it.
Oh.
Uh, and so I was like, you know, I mean, I was feeling like crap. And I ended up going to Florida, and I decided I'm just going to write the script in like, and I took 2 weeks and I wrote the script really quickly, and it sort of poured out of me. Um, and then ended up getting an agent from that script, but the long story short is it ended up at Silver Pictures ultimately.
Well,
It was a long, complicated journey, but it ended up there with the person that said they didn't understand it, and that was like a big victory to me, that I was able to take this convoluted story and somehow make it make sense. So
there's pitching a script and then there's writing a script. Such a different beast and it's an art form within itself. You have a certain amount of time that you have with them. You got to sell in the room and get through the stuff, and then as opposed to writing a script, or where they on their time can interpret the words on the page. Was that a big epiphany for you too, with like going along your career of like how to actually sell with just a pitch, or did you take a while to build that pitch skill?
the muscle took a long time to build. The pitch muscle, it took a long time to build. But what I realize, and I tell people all the time now, and actually you're lucky, as an actor, you've already conquered the skill of being in front of people and being brave,
Mhm.
being able to speak, communicate, articulate things you need to do. As writers, we're very sort of like, we're not the most social people sometimes. We're not the most articulate people. The reason we write is because we want to be alone in a room writing screenplays or writing stories. We don't want to be on stage telling a story. We
Mm,
want to be in front of a computer telling one. So
mm,
I always tell people, take an acting course, learn how to stand up in front of other people, be
mhm,
brave, be articulate, and be able to communicate without the fear
mhm,
of, oh my God, they're going to hate me or they're not going to like me. You have to be fearless. So you have to, salesmen um, have a great skill because they're not afraid to knock on a door and sell a product and know that, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to, those doors are going to be slammed in their face.
mhm,
So you have to have that sort of like the fearlessness of being able to go in front of a room and pitch something. And part of that is part of the muscle that needs to grow to be able to be a good, storyteller or
mhm,
pitcher. Sorry. Um, the other thing is what a friend told me years ago, and it's so true, that executives don't know what they want until you tell them. So the idea is they may think they know, but you have to go in with the confidence of your story
mhm.
is going to change their career. Your story is going to be their biggest movie next year or 2 years from now.
Wow.
You have to go in with great confidence in what you're pitching, that if they say no, they're losing out. So you have to go in, and it's not being cocky,
Mhm,
but it's being confident in what you're about to tell them, the story you're about to tell them. You can't show any sort of like uncertainty,
mhm,
uh, or you have to tell them what they want. This is something that you need, and you have to go in with that attitude. And I've always felt that when I sort of like the dials turned for me and I realized that
mhm,
that's something that I need to add to sort of my, pitch muscle, I've always had a better experience. And if they said no, it's not because they said no because it wasn't great. It may not have fit their schedule, whatever. But I've always felt like once I learned those little um, and they're not tricks, but I just learned how to sort of like, um, how to pitch.
mhm.
I was more successful because at first when I was young, I'd go in and say, "Oh, it's Ghostbusters, Gremlins," and it was like, "What?" Like, like I like sort of mumble through it, and I
Mm,
realized I got to be fearless. I got to
mm,
learn, and I tell people all the time, take this public speaking course,
mhm,
be able to stand in front of people. That's the first thing,
mhm,
is be in front of people and be confident in what you're selling, know your story, know what the questions are, and have those answers ready. Um, uh, just do it when it's ready. Also, don't rush into something and don't follow trends.
mhm.
A lot of times is you go in, pitch them something that they don't have, but feel they may need based on, what you're selling them.
Now, when you take me to because there's it's like even on I've talked to you about this stuff before. Like the development side of things is in insane. Like I sold something like 2 years ago and we're still in development on it. Like I thought for sure, I'm like, I've sold my first show. We're going to open up a writer's room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always like that. It's
But I didn't know,
development, but development in TV, it used to be, and it's still sort of hanging on with its, its fingernails, is it had a very sort of like rigid schedule where
Mm,
you would sell something around the summertime,
yeah.
and you would know whether that thing was going to go to pilot by January, February.
Yeah.
So the development uh, wasn't that long.
Hmm.
Now with streaming, I wrote something for Netflix. I started writing about a year and a half ago. Like that thing should have been over. That development period should have been over within 6 months, but it's gone on for 2 years now. Um, in film, you write a screenplay, you sell it, and it could be in development, which I've been in many times for years.
Yeah.
Years. I wrote something for Sony Pictures. Uh, I started writing it about 3 years ago. I turned it in about 6 months ago, and I could be in development for another 6 years. I mean, who knows?
It's mind blowing because then it's like the passion of like you saw we have it, to go back into it and tell, but it's just you're like the idea of what the path I thought what it was like. It's because as an actor you get cast and then someone calls you from wardrobe, someone calls you, you get your medical, you're on a plane, you land, you get a breakfast burrito, you're on set. That's sort of like that's the way it goes. So but the behind the scenes, the process, and even you were very gracious when I said, hey, I want to learn how to produce and this, and you opened up the door to the writer's room and we're just say, hey, because I explained to you, I didn't go to college. I want to treat CSI New York as like my college. And you're like, yeah, come on. And then when you opened up that door, I was like, it was like, Willy Wonka's factory. I was just like, whoa, there's all of this goes on. Like, I remember when Dwayne Clark, is Dwayne Clark?
Dwayne, yeah.
And I shadowed him and we sat in a writer, and then when they do the tone meeting, and I was there, and you were there, and I was just like, all this stuff, all the departments talking, I was just like, what is going? I had no clue as an actor, of just like watching all this stuff. Which now looking back, that I've gotten the privilege to do that a couple of times, is like when you show up to the day and the actor's like, I wouldn't say this. It's like, oh my god. It's like
they don't realize how hard it was just to get those words down.
To get here at all the departments, and you're saying, I wouldn't. It's like, dude, you literally had 2 weeks to talk about this. And I'm like, I've been that actor before because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And you're like, it would click. It's like, and there's just so much to get to that one moment where the engine is like, just turning it on. We're going to start the scene. And someone's like, I don't think my character would do that. It's like, what? It's like,
because you got to remember, first of all, there was a great quote by James Cameron that said, he's been to the bottom of the ocean, he's been to space. The thing that scared him the most was the blank page. So when you think about it, it starts with a blank page, and then you start to you're in a room with a committee and you sort of craft a story. Then you finally put it on paper. Then it goes to executives. You get notes. So by the time the actor gets it, you feel as a writer, it's bulletproof. You feel that it's gone through all these checks and balances. So, and we know this, we know the character, sometimes not as well as the actor, because the actor brings so much to it, but you feel like you've given it to them where it's bulletproof. So when they say, I wouldn't say that, if you said it in a way where, can I, reshape this? But when you say something as bold as like, my character wouldn't say this, you don't realize that
it's not your character.
how much went into getting to this place where the character would say that based on the fact that we built this for that character. So
I remember
semantics
are
really important there.
I remember you were telling me one time about like, if we change this here, the ripple effect, then all the other things that have to and it's not that you may be right within that saying, but if we were to change that, it changes everything. Like that one little thing, that one little change that you're seeing only from your perspective, yes, but there's so much then that changes because of that one thing. It's like a house of cards almost. Like everything is just all built in, and it's like you don't, as a young actor, you don't understand. Oh yeah, because if I say this, then that changes the other things, or even the next scene after this, or the moment before, it doesn't match. But you just don't know, because until I saw that door open up and was like, whoa, there's so much involvement to actually getting it to the place where we're rolling film and it's this interaction, and everything that happens in that moment has to, when they go edit it, has to all seamlessly go together. It's like it's there's so much that goes into every moment of each scene that you're there. By the time you get to there, when somebody's like, this doesn't work for me. You're like, what the fuck you mean it doesn't work for you?
Well, it's funny because on a procedural,
Mhm.
CSI New York, especially shows like that, um, every word is really important because it's all like it's forensics, it's
Information.
science, it's
Yeah.
like, so those things do have repercussions,
Mhm.
if they're not said in an earlier scene.
Mhm.
But sometimes, and I think with your character specifically from CSI New York, there were some things, subtle things that I remember putting in that were telltale signs of a relationship you had with your father
Mhm.
that was very combustible.
Mhm.
And so there were little subtle things that if those things weren't planted earlier, things later on would seem like they're just coming out of the blue.
Mhm.
So sometimes the actor may not be privy to those things,
Mhm.
and it may say, like, why am I doing this in this scene?
Mhm.
And that's why it's always good to have a writer down on set to be
Mhm.
able to say, look, it may not make sense now, but it will in the next script or script 2 scripts from now. And that's the value of having a writer on set who knows downfield what's coming.
Did you
Um,
did you see the it was behind the scenes with James Gunn and Superman, where they were talking? He just needed to understand the why of why he was doing that with Lex Luthor. That moment on set where they captured it. Did you see that?
no, I didn't see that.
It's such a great moment because the it could be misinterpreted that Superman was, he just didn't understand the context of what the director was wanting at that time, but he slowed it down for him to sort of tell the narrative a little more of what the why was, why he needed this emotion. And what I loved about this Superman in particular, I really feel like, there's just I think out of all the Supermans, it was a super brave scene, that 12-minute like sit down talking scene where he's talking with, you've seen the new Superman?
Yeah.
Where he's in the apartment talking with her. And for the first time ever, you see why Superman, what bugs him and what pains him. And it's like, if that was acted wrong, or you can't do a talking head scene in Superman with no action for like 12 minutes, and it's just this powerful scene. And for the rest of the movie, the throttle goes down, but you saw what hurt him, why he didn't like, why he can't fit in, why he was like, everything in that moment. And it was so well done. And I've seen the movie like 3 times since, just to understand that scene, because it's like I've never seen a moment like that in a superhero movie where you understood what his pain was. And it was so well done that became one of my, I will say, go down as in all my superhero movies, it became the still moment of you understood who the character was. And I could see how, where the writer or the director, that takes a lot of balls to say, this is what we're going to do in a moment like that. I've loved reading about your characters and stuff that I've said. You've always ground, like you said, you plant these little seeds along the way that give the character this, you humanize them. You make like very, you give them a heartbeat, and you slow it down. You have these like little sensitive moments, because your action, I always, on CSI New York, you'd write these amazing action sequences. But if you don't have like the reason why you're having the action, then it means nothing. Then it's just cars crashing. If you don't understand what the chase is, in the French Connection, what that whole, you felt tension in those scenes because of you cared about the characters. Do you go through a process to really break down the characters and find that heartbeat?
I'll tell you, as a kid, I loved Magnum P.I. Loved it. There was an episode that stood out in particular where Magnum killed somebody in cold blood.
Mhm.
And I always said, like, that's what I want to do. I want to affect people like that.
Mhm.
And it worked because you understood the character. You
Mm.
understood the trauma he had gone through in Vietnam. You understood all that. So for me, uh, I always like to know what motivates the character. What's like, so when I got to like CSI New York, I remember thinking that the show in the one in Vegas was very much like it was about the crime and it was about the sort of like the gloss of Vegas, all stuff. So what I liked about the opportunity with CSI New York was you get to go home with the characters. So I really focused on, like Gary, for me, Gary, idolized his father who was in the military, and Gary went into the military because of his father. And
Mhm.
like those things were really important to me to understand where he is right now, where he came from. Um, like your relationship with your father was
Mm.
the opposite. Like I really cared about, and I still believe people don't watch the shows that I sort of, or the ones I rebooted. People don't watch them for the plot. They watch them for the characters. They
Mhm.
watch them for these flesh and blood, fully formed human beings,
Mhm.
which is what you were talking about, because in that scene in Superman was the man part of the super,
Yes.
right? So it
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
human part of Superman you got to see in that scene that sort of emphasized that he was a man
Did you
and
love
he
that scene? Did
had
you love that
emotional.
scene?
Yeah, I thought it was a really powerful scene.
Yeah.
But I understand that, and I've always, and not always been successful at it, but I've always tried to like uh, uh, go for the human part of a in a script, looking for
Mm.
what the humanity or the human part of it, or the reason why you're along for the journey. In very subtle ways, sort of explain why the characters are doing what they're doing, or why they're in this situation in the first place. Even the criminals, I always wanted them to have some humanity, like
Mm.
something. They weren't just black and white, that there was some gray to them. That's always been exciting to me as a writer, to somehow bring character to, and again, not always successful, but
Yeah.
bring character to the stories.
What do you feel like when you look back at your amazing career like that? You put the end on the paper. What were you like? I loved every moment of this journey. What was that for you?
Well, God, it's there's so many times that I think I've written a character that I've been proud of. Uh, there was an episode, coincidentally, on CSI New York,
Mm.
that Ed Asner played, and he got
Oh,
nominated for an Emmy
that's
for
right.
it.
The clock. That
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And so I wrote this very complicated character who went through this whole journey and I remember like finishing the script and thinking, wow, I hope we get the right actor for this, because I felt confident that it was a great role, and we got Ed Asner, and he got nominated for an Emmy for
yeah.
it, and that was a great like moment in my career, seeing Ed Asner, who we all grow up,
He was the
idolizing
best.
as
He
a
was the
yeah,
best. What a
yeah,
great
and I actually brought him back on Five-0 also, which he was amazing at. But that to me was, and he was the villain. So
yeah.
but for me, it was a very sort of well-rounded, very complicated gray character, um, who you were a little bit sympathetic to at the end,
Mhm.
even though he had done these, atrocious things. Um, but they're only as good. They're only as good as the people who play them. Like,
Mhm.
you could have something down on paper and you think it's great, and you miscast, and maybe it doesn't come together the way you wanted. But for the most part, I've been very lucky that actors have always made it better than it
Mhm.
was, because Ed really brought so much to it. And I think that, honestly, I think I've been very lucky with casting on most of my shows.
I mean,
Very lucky.
I remember back in the day, like you'd go to Planet Hollywood, right? And you'd see all like the major movie stars, and that was like I loved going to Planet Hollywood because I just was like, oh, this is my. Before I went down to Hollywood, I was like, this is what it is, this is Planet Hollywood. And then meeting you and I finding out all these movies, like you wrote half of, like you wrote these movies with these movie stars like Bruce Willis. That's my favorite character of all time. If there was a person that said whose career would you want, I'd say Bruce Willis's career. John McClane
Yeah.
is the greatest character, and again, going back to the why, like it's it's about a guy that's just trying to get his marriage back together. Like he gets his ass kicked in every fight. He's not super jacked. He's like pissed off. Like the scene with him rubbing his feet on the socks on the carpet before.
Yeah.
He's just like he's got kind of like a little chubby belly, like hanging over his belt, and he meets his wife, but he just wants to fix his marriage, and it happens to be at Christmas time, and he's like, and he doesn't have all these crazy moves, but he just loves his wife and wants to get back. Like it's just the best. And
Yeah.
he's like receding hairline and just his delivery, yippee, like it's just come to California. Like it's the greatest character. Like, I mean, for you, like when you found out, like, can you just walk me through that? I know I've asked you in person to tell me the story, but like when you walk on set and you see through the monitor that Bruce Willis is like, what's that like?
I'll tell you something. I've always felt, and there's a lot of movies that I've written where I didn't get credit.
Yeah.
Where for some one reason or another, the guild doesn't
Yeah.
award you a credit. But every time I've gone on a set and I've
Yeah.
seen a celebrity,
Yeah.
I always think that I feel like I'm a poser, that I don't belong
Yeah.
here, that there's no reason why. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
It always feels, and it's even with and again, everything I've ever done, I've always feel like I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
And it's a crazy thing.
Mhm.
And I think it's just because I from where I grew up, from my background, that I've always felt like that. I don't know why, but you just never feel worthy of it.
Mhm.
And I know it's crazy because I've been working for 30 something years, but I've never felt like I was worthy of that. It's a weird
But
thing. So when you say, like, to go on set and see a celebrity in front of the camera, I always feel like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Maybe if they discover, even it's funny. It goes back to when I was 25 years old. I had a deal at Universal
Mhm.
as a screenwriter. They used to make overall deals. And I remember I used to go to the commissary for lunch
Mhm.
every day. And every day, Lou Wasserman and Sid Sheinberg sat in the back.
Mhm.
They had their own table. There was a phone on the table.
No way.
And every time they'd walk in, and I told Sid this years later because I got to work with Sid. And every time those two walked in, I'd always like either look away or put my head down. And I don't even know why. Not that they would ever recognize me or know who I was, but I always felt like if they see me and know who I am and know that they're paying me, they're going to kick me out. So instinctively, every time they would come in for lunch, I would like do this, or I'd put my head down, because I always felt like, how did I end up here? Like, no matter how old I've gotten or how many credits I have, I still have that as a part of my sort of DNA, where no matter where I go, what I do, every set I go to, I think, like, how did I get here? Like, how is this? Like, I just don't understand.
There's celebrities, but movie stars, like I think Tom Cruise is probably the last movie star from our generation, like a movie star, like the Planet Hollywood. Those were movie stars. I mean, like Stallone. I mean, Stallone. Was it like what was it like looking at Stallone through the monitor? Were you just like, is this like what year was
You
that?
got to remember, like that. I grew up like going to the theater and seeing Rocky.
Yeah,
And like that being my hero, then Rambo and all these movies.
Over
So,
the Top.
yeah,
Over the Top's my
even Over
favorite
the
one.
Top.
It's my
Yeah,
favorite.
even Over
Yeah,
the Top. I still can watch
yeah.
that. But yeah, it's a surreal. It's surreal experience. Like, to be able to. And even like I remember I brought my sister down to Warner Brothers and introduced her to Stallone. Like the idea of Stallone knowing who you are,
Yeah.
or like that, just that in itself. And I actually went to see him a few years, because we were talking about maybe doing something a few years back. And the fact that, I hadn't seen him in a number of years, but like he still remembered our experience. And like that to me is like, it's mind blowing. I don't know how to describe it, but it's an amazing experience. And it's interesting because you mentioned Bruce Willis. Uh, the first thing I ever produced, Bruce actually gave me some great advice about it. First TV show or pilot I wrote. and his brother David Willis ended up being a producer on it. And so I spent a lot of time with Bruce, and we were developing something for TV together. And I remember that when The Last Boy Scout came out, and I went to the premiere. I had some friends in town from Montreal, and I had told them that I was working with Bruce Willis, and of course they probably didn't believe me. But we went to the premiere, and I remember they wanted to wait and see Bruce Willis. At the end, everybody went out. Bruce was like one of the last to leave, but they wanted to wait to see Bruce Willis like walk out of the theater. And I was like saying, "Oh my God, like they think I really know him that well and everything." And anyways, so I waited, and I thought, "Oh, this is going to be a disaster because they're going to go back to Montreal and say this guy, is a poser and all that stuff." And I remember going out in the lobby, and I see Bruce Willis. We catch eyes. He goes, "Lenkov, come over here." And my friends, like, their jaws dropped. And he introduced me to Demi. I had not met his wife at the time, Demi Moore, but he introduced me. And my friends went home, and I feasted on that story for years.
Oh, yeah.
Where they went back and saying, "Peter knows Bruce Willis." Like, that was like, so the idea of somebody interacting with somebody like that at that level of fame, and them sort of recognizing you, knowing your name, giving you that respect, that's still mind blowing. It's still
and
like
those were
away.
the movie stars. That was Planet Hollywood. That was the people on the wall. Like I would lose my
Stallone,
shit.
Schwarzenegger. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Did you learn how to smoke cigars from those guys, or did you get to smoke cigars with them?
I started smoking cigars back at the La Femme Nikita days with this guy named Larry Herzog, who was a big influence on my career, very big TV writer. So I really started around that time. But that was before I got to work with those characters, or those actors. But yeah, it was before then. But
I wanted to talk about the cigar story. So you called me up randomly, and you're like, "Hey, my friend is doing this movie in Cuba, and you got to do it. They're going to call you." And I was like, "Okay." And they got Ron Perlman, and you're going to go to Cuba. And I was like, "Oh, great." I'm like, "I've never been to Cuba." They just lifted like the sanctions, and I'm like, I have no clue. And then we find out like it's like the first American co-production, like in however long ever. And I show up, and we're in this famous, like, it's where like Sinatra and stuff stayed, the hotel that we're at.
the National.
Yeah, we're at that hotel, and I meet Ron, and Ron's Ron. I mean, Hellboy, everything. I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. And I meet all these people there, and then Ron says, he's like, "Do you want to come smoke a cigar?" And I was like, "Yeah." And again, my experience, I still to this day can't. I enjoy them, but I'll still mess up with the coughing on it and whatnot. And we go downstairs in the basement of this amazing, like the history that was there, and the guy was explaining all the history and who would be in these rooms, and they're rolling out it on the cigar, and the lady's rolling like a fresh cigar, and I'm with Ron Perlman, and they pour like some whiskey or scotch. I don't know what it was, but I didn't care because I'm like, this is fantastic. This is so great. And we roll up this thing, and we smoke it. I make such an ass of myself. I'm like trying to he's like, "Yo," Ron's like, "You okay?" I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And he dipped like in the whatever we were drinking. He had like a dipped it in that. But it was just like one of those great experiences that you just don't, like I got to go to Cuba, I was one of the first American co-productions ever with Ron Perlman, smoking a cigar at the bottom of one of the most famous, iconic hotels. And because you randomly called, I had no idea what I was getting into. Like, yeah, this guy's going to call you, and you're going to leave like in like a week. You want to do it? You're perfect for this. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is great. It was so fun. It was like one of the greatest things. And it was like, it was about like a call from an American astronaut that the guy in Cuba picked up, and it landed, and the movie did great. It was a really beautiful little film. That was such a great.
And Gabby directed it, right?
Yeah,
did Gabby direct it?
I think so. Yeah. But it was just like it's like that's the one thing with this industry is like you don't know when the next job is coming. And then when you go on this, you're like sort of a traveling circus. Like you show up, and you go through these moments. Even when we're sitting here with Carmine and Eddie, and man, we got a little emotional. It's like you spend 8 years, 8-9 years, that you're so lucky to even have that type of a run, and you go through divorces and death and real life experiences and the highs and lows, and then it's over, and you're like, wow, it's like you're just it has occupies the space in your mind, and to see them again and to see you today and like to be walking through, it's this business is as much as it drives me fucking, it's the greatest business in the fucking world. It really is. And we've been very fortunate to be making a living doing what we love. And it's still, there's still struggles and there's still the ups and downs. I mean, it's the part of the business that it's all worth it when you walk on that set and you hear. I used to love the purr of the camera that would like get me locked in. That's no longer. But when you meet these people along the way, that you're just like, wow. And again, when it's so abrupt how it ends. Like it's just like you're busy. Like, do you have, when you're done a job, do you have it where you don't know what to do with yourself because you're so used to being on like a, go to set, here's your call, and blah blah blah, and then it stops. You're like, what's happening? Like I didn't, you don't know how to like get into, like I have to be busy all the time, hence me always like moving, but it's so hard to like just be okay being still. It's like,
I don't like being still. I always was loading up my plate with things, whether they were things that needed to be triaged or things down the road. So I would always think about what's coming next because I didn't like down periods. I don't like down periods. I don't like not having a fully packed schedule. I don't like idle time. It's a very sort of blue collar mentality of having to put in a full day's work.
Yeah.
And that's what I like. I've always looked for ways, whether it was in writing or even in entrepreneurial endeavors, to keep myself busy because I like being busy. And part of it is, ADD, part of it is that, but I really like being very busy. So, but it's funny you say about the carnival, because it is like a traveling circus. You have this family, you go away with them, and then it ends and you have to say goodbye. I've always told actors who have said, look, I got this opportunity, but it's going somewhere else. I said, that's our business. Our business is about having a bag that's always ready to go, and you have to be ready to go, and you go where the work is.
You were with CSI for 5 years, right? 5 or 6 years? When I showed up, it was like when you showed up.
5 or 6. Yeah, about 5 or 6.
Do you remember when?
5.
Do you remember when
5 years.
I just signed the contract with CSI New York, and at the same time I was up for Scotty on Star Trek. You remember that?
Yeah.
And we got very serious, and I was like, dude, and you're like, what's going on? And I'm like, because and CSI is obviously the greatest, was like and I'm like, this is happening, and you're like, let me send JJ an email, and you like email JJ Abrams like, hey, I know AJ's up for this, we'll work out the schedule, and I was like. And he replied back, he goes, that's great to know going into this. And I was like, oh my God, I was going to be, I was up for Scotty. It was like, I remember talking to you, you're like, this would be great for you. And I was like, because I didn't sleep the night before. I'm like, I literally just got this job and I'm going to go talk to Lenkov about what's going on. You're like, that's great, dude. This would be great. I was like, oh, okay, it's going to be great. And Gary on the poster, I remember at the end of that year, we were all in that iconic thing we wrote. He was like, I'm so glad you didn't get Scotty and you stayed with us. It was.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's so funny.
I mean, you've written, from like franchise after franchise after franchise. You had, because you wrote on 24, right?
Yeah.
I always remember I met the guys when we'd have our football Thanksgiving. Like, I miss those days. But we had our football. I met all the guys from the other writers. You're like, yeah, it was just, it's like old friends, and you're like, oh, you wrote in 24, and then they would tell the stories of and then you went from 24 to CSI New York.
24 to CSI New York, yeah.
And then CSI New York to Hawaii.
Yeah, to Hawaii Five-0.
And then Hawaii Five-0 to
MacGyver, and then Magnum P.I.
I mean, that's like, what?
And we did also a show called There was a
Oh,
summer show I
the
did for a
asteroid,
couple of
the
years. Yeah,
asteroid. Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
did that for a couple of years. Yeah,
With
we
Ian.
did that for two summer. Yeah, with Ian. Yeah,
Ian's he's a sweetheart. I love that
the
guy.
greatest.
He's
Ian Anthony Dale, the
the most
greatest,
handsome
greatest.
Asian guy
Yeah,
on the planet. The guy does not have a
yeah.
bad angle.
Handsome guy, any ethnicity,
Yeah,
just the most
yeah.
handsome,
He's just
hands down.
yeah, he's just like, and just such a like a sweet. I did Murder in the First with him, but just a great dude.
Good dude.
To take all of those shows, like to like there were shows that were dusty on the shelf to that had, you know, to then to be like, okay, I'm gonna reinvent this. I'm gonna kind of give it the modern, you know, and you became the guy to go to do this. And it wasn't like they all ran and became syndicated.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in that, looking back in your career, is there a moment of like, is that like a feather in the cap sort of thing that you were like, yeah, I did that. Like, that was, any regrets, any?
Well, it's funny. I always wanted to do Magnum,
Mhm.
and I needed to do 5-0 in order to get to Magnum. And I always realized that I needed to sort of prove myself before I got
Mhm.
Magnum. Um, with 5-0, I remember two things. Nina Tassler was running CBS, and
Nina.
you have CBS's crown jewel.
Mhm.
So I remember that pressure of
Mhm.
like, because 5-0, the original, ran 12 years. At that time, I think reboots of TV shows ran maybe two. I think the max was like 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
I don't think
Yeah.
reboots ran
No.
further than that. So the idea of the press already, sort of came to the show with their arms crossed, saying, "This is just another reboot that will be gone in a year from now."
Mhm.
So every year that we got renewed was a massive victory, because I felt like I was going into unknown territory, taking something, um, a reboot, and sort of giving it new life, a new direction, uh, and allowing it to stand on its own. Um, Really was a feather in my cap. I
Yeah.
felt that was a victory. Just keeping that show on the air, knowing how valuable the franchise was to CBS, and the fact that no other reboot had gone as far. Every year we were distancing ourselves from the last reboot that only went 2 or 3 years. So when we got to 10 years, it was like still a record in terms of a reboot staying on the air. So uh, that was a massive victory.
Whether you know it or not, like, you've literally helped, like, by casting me, by casting, you know, so many other actors on these massive franchises. Like, our lives have changed, you know, dramatically. And it's you don't realize how lucky you are when you're on it, because you can get wrapped up in all the other stuff, and when you look back, you're like, man, what a time, what an amazing, brilliant time to be on and do a run like that. It's unheard of, you know. And did you have moments where, while you're like, were you able to take a beat on each one and be like, wow, I'm doing something that no one's ever done before?
I think for me, a lot of the sort of like, I got a lot of pleasure in keeping people in Hawaii employed, because there
Mm.
wasn't a lot of work there. I remember when we started doing MacGyver in Atlanta, there was a lot of crew members that, really didn't take their job as seriously as other crews and because they knew that if they got fired, they could go across the street and get
Yeah.
another job. In Hawaii, we were the only game in town.
Hmm.
Everybody gave 110% every day. Everybody was committed to their job. They were great at their job. But for me, the reward was the fact that we went 10 years. These people had 10 years
Yeah.
of constant employment. People like Taylor Wiley, who had never really spent much time in front of a camera, had 10 years
Hmm.
of employment as an actor, became a celebrity.
Yeah.
And all the other people that we cast there who became recognizable figures, who made good, good money. That was because, look, the sort of the people on the call sheet, the number ones, number twos, the opportunities for them are there.
Hmm.
They always will be there. But the ones further down on the call sheet, some of them that work there in Hawaii, this was an opportunity they may never see again. So
Mhm.
that to me was so rewarding. The fact that they got constant employment for so long, the crew, that cast, that was amazing. I stay in touch with them because they become really close to me.
Yeah.
They become family, people that I really felt responsible to take care of. Because I knew that if we left, there may not be another show following
Yeah.
in our footsteps. And even if there was, there's no guarantee it's going to go more than a year or a certain amount of time. So that to me was the best part of the experience.
So you did
That
the Hawaii 5-0, and so it was 2 of the 4 were done in Hawaii, right? MacGyver, Hawaii. So then you
MacGyver, yeah, Atlanta, and then 5-0 and Magnum were in Hawaii.
for 5-0
And we were doing the last few years of 5-0, we did at the same time as Magnum. So they were going
I mean, how is
simultaneously.
that? Was it just how did you how did you that sounds like you're running 2 writing rooms and going flying, like it's not even like it's on like it's like going from LA to Hawaii is like, a 5-hour flight, but to go across the country and then go back, I mean, was that, and then all the different
Atlanta
stories.
to Hawaii was hard, yeah.
Yeah.
But Gary Marshall, so Gary Marshall
Yep.
from Laverne and
Yep.
Shirley, and so I got to know Gary Marshall a little bit before he passed away, and I had asked him once at lunch. I had asked him like his advice on doing multiple shows. At the time, I only had one, but I had always had my eye on doing Magnum, so I'd always hoped I'd be in a scenario where I could do both at the same time. And I asked, "How did you do that?" He was at the Paramount lot. He was doing Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy. And I said, "What's the key to doing multiple shows at the same time?"
Mhm.
And he said, "Roller skates." So you have to use roller skates to get from one stage to the next. You got to be fast. You got to be on top of everything. Now, he didn't say rollerblades. He's from a different generation, so they
Yeah.
were roller
Yeah.
skates.
Yeah.
But that was like, and again, he was making light of it and making fun. But you have to be very mobile and be ready to go from one place to another, putting fires out on different sets, um, and I learned how to multitask. I mean, always good at multitasking, but I really went through a trial by fire with when those 3 shows were in its heyday. Um, that was it was tough.
What was one of the most challenging parts of your career?
Probably MacGyver.
Yeah.
MacGyver. MacGyver wasn't something I was dying to do. MacGyver fell into my lap when the original pilot was not to the liking of CBS, and they asked me to come in and fix it. So I wrote a new pilot.
I remember you saying to me, I was watching it with you, and you said, like, I got to fix his hair. Remember you said like he had super long hair.
Yeah,
And
so Lucas, yeah, the original pilot, they for some crazy reason they had him with like almost like waist length hair.
yeah.
It was sort of like I don't know if anybody at the studio was paying attention, and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But the first pilot, and it was a valiant effort to make something special, but it really was nothing special. And I think they thought that maybe I could add something to it.
Mhm.
And I did that not because I loved the show, but I wanted to be a good soldier. Like I
Mhm.
just wanted to please CBS at the
Mhm.
time. Not that I believed in it or believed in the cast or any of that. I did it for the wrong reasons. I
Mhm.
didn't do it for the love of the show. I did it because I just wanted them to like me more.
Mhm.
I know it sounds crazy,
No, we
but
all go through that.
anyways, yeah, so I did it to be a good soldier, but I never really liked the show, and I'm being really honest.
Mhm.
I just never liked it. I always of course, went through all the motions of being the champion of the show, and because I was the showrunner of the show, but I never was a champion of it. I didn't believe in the lead, and Lucas. As much as I tried to make him a leading man and work, it was a lot of work.
Mhm.
And they had given me an opportunity of letting him go early on. But I thought with my ego at the time, I'm going to make this work. I'm not going to give CBS problems. I'm going to make this guy work. And, every conversation I'd have to him about getting healthy, getting strong, because doing 22 episodes a year is
Mhm.
a battle. You can't just do it um, by being out partying and doing all the things that I just thought were wrong. Um, that was a challenge to me to
Mhm.
make this guy a leading man, when he was resistant to all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there were some other cast members that were challenging, but it was just from the top down sometimes. Tristan was amazing. I loved working with her. There were some other, actors that I liked working with, but and I was also working with some crew members that I had known before from other shows, but it was not something I ever should have done because I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I wasn't passionate about it. Agents and managers that weren't like sort of like putting the show first. They were putting their actors or their talent first. It was a disaster on a number of levels. So
It's hard too in those situations where you don't know, like when the plate's full in a sense, or that like and when you like you said, when you want to please and be the team player or whatever that is, it's like although you think you're doing what you think it will please other people, at the end of the day it's killing you inside, and whether you want to admit it or not, because it's time. It's about, all comes down to time. How much time do you have in the day? And I've sort of been, this sort of next part of my career is like, if I'm ever going to do anything or whatever I put my time into, I want to be able to look at my kids and I want to look at my wife and say, the time that I am away from you, the football games that I miss, has been absolutely worth it. And if it does not, if I can't not actually look at them and say, this is going to be, as hard as that will be for me to miss this, what I'm doing is going to benefit you guys on such a bigger level. And I am getting so much joy from doing that. And it's also like choosing the people you want to work with. Like, I have this strong policy, no assholes allowed. I don't want to deal with them, and we've all dealt with them. It's just, it's painless. And it's like, you can't fix stupid. You can't, there's these people, in any business or anything, that just suck the life out of you, and they're there and you get caught in this vortex of like, but I think when you enter into something that you've allowed yourself for the wrong reason, because you want to please other people as opposed to take care of you first. My mom gave me this great metaphor once when I was going through this really tough time. And she said, AJ, you travel a lot, and, you see this metaphor there, but you're not correlating to life. It's like, when you're on a plane and, they tell you before you take off, if anything bad happens, oxygen will come down. And before you can help your children or anybody else, you got to put that on yourself, right? Like, don't worry about pleasing the other people, like trying to, like, you will die if you don't take your breath and fill your air with lungs. And you got to stop doing that. You have to do what's right for you on the inside, because when you do that, what's right for you, and spend the time doing that, it allows you then to be the best for the people you care about most, and not fucking wasting time on people that don't care whether you show up or whether you don't. They're just take, and it's a one-way street. And there's so many of those people in this business and just in this world in general that will just suck you dry. And I think there's always that, for me, is like when you allow yourself to not try to be pleasing people, to get their good job, like you're searching for that. But when you know what your value is, and that you're, and Peter, like, I say this, I don't say this lightly. There's not many men that I can look across and say, thank you so much for, like, you are one of the greatest people I've ever met in this business. You truly are. And Eddie and I were talking last night, and people I talk about, you've gone out of your way for so many people. You've created opportunity for so many people, and you are so kind to the crew. I still have my CSI New York scooter. It's a piece of, but like, you're just one of the most thoughtful guys, and I know you're a 3 a.m. phone call. I know I could call, and you're just, there's not many people like you out there, and you've been at the top of the game for a long time, and there's so many people that just absolutely love you and are very aware of what you've done. And you've been a hell of a boss to work with. You've been a hell of a mentor. I consider you a really dear friend. I put you on the level of like a father figure in the business. And Eddie and I just talking about you yesterday. It was so great just to, like, and then connect on the phone. I send you pictures, and we're like, it was like, it's like you pick up where you left off. I mean, you're literally one of the best, man. And I'm glad I get this opportunity to tell you this, because I know you've had some ups and downs and stuff like that. And those things affected all of us, because we knew that was all bullshit. We knew it was absolute garbage, and we know who you were, and you weathered that storm and you came out on top, and the people that had nothing else to do but to go after somebody good, where are they now? They've slithered back into the dark shadows, and let them do that. So I just want to know, I love you, brother. And I appreciate you taking this time today to be here. And I can't thank you enough. And I always got your back, no matter what.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You had me going through this thing of emotion where I was about to cry, then you made me laugh. So thank you.
Well,
thank
I
you,
love
buddy.
you,
I
dude.
love you too.
And I hope to see you when I get back to LA, or if you ever want to come
Yeah.
and get your redneck on in South Carolina, man. I'll
Anytime, buddy. I love that.